Hey YouTube, welcome to Homegrown, where we feature product reviews for American-made outdoor gear. We are getting started today with the Benchmade Mini-Bugout. So the Bugout has been a popular knife for a few years, one of Benchmade's more popular knives, I'd say. The Mini, as you might suspect, is a smaller version. This one is a 533 BK1, which is called commonly the Stormtrooper because it arrives standard with white scales and the black coated blade. As you can see, the white scales were not my flavor, so I did a bit of a dye job that I'll give you some details on in a moment. This is a knife I bought online just like everybody else. Retails right now from Benchmade at $160. I think I got it for around 140 bucks, and it seems to be where most online retailers are showing up. A great everyday carry knife, and that's sort of the wheelhouse for this design. Axis lock, for those of you who are familiar with Benchmade, is truly ambidextrous, so you get the same action out of that knife either way. Thumb screws also on both sides, and the ability to mount the deep carry pocket clip, mini deep carry pocket clip on either side of the knife. Also have a lanyard hole on there if you decide to carry it that way, and if you use the clip, it does carry tip up. S30V blade, so great everyday carry steel, very popular without breaking the bank. This one is coated, which I'm going to talk about in a little bit. That's turned out not to be my very favorite thing, but overall I am very happy with the knife. Grivery handles on this knife. So if you're familiar with the original Bugout, there was a fair bit of conversation about the ability to squeeze the handle together, the scales together, and folks would kind of freak out about that. I'm not sure it was ever a big deal, but it definitely doesn't seem to be as flexible in the Mini. I think just the smaller footprint there makes it a little bit more rigid. So if that bugged you about the Bugout, I don't think it's going to bother you with the Mini. Closed 3.704 inches, opens to just shy of 6.5. Blade length is 2.82 inches. Handle thickness of 0.412, so very skinny here, which is great for pocket carry. Weight on this knife overall is 1.5 ounces. It doesn't weigh much of anything, but at the same time, still feels solid. You know, doesn't feel cheap or flimsy or bobo in hand. I really appreciate the way the knife is put together, and think that despite its lightweight, it is surprisingly solid. So that's the Mini Bugout. Just giving you a little bit of a comparison. This is a Benchmade North Fork, so a bit larger knife, but if you're familiar with that platform, that gives you an idea of how those two stack up. Obviously the Mini Bugout is a bit narrower through the blade, as well as the handle there. So North Fork and the Mini Bugout on the table there for you. This knife is a fair bit different, but the Buck 110 series is popular and well known. This is the new 110 Slim Select, which I'm going to talk about in another review another day. But obviously different price point, different category of knife sort of, but a lot of folks are familiar with that platform, so I thought it might be a useful size comparison. And the Slim, as the name might indicate, is pretty skinny in its own right, so maybe a little thicker through the blade, but similar width on the handles there. So a little bit of a size comparison for you. Overall thoughts on the Mini Bugout. Great operation, very smooth with the axis lock, doesn't take a lot of practice, is strangely fun to fool around with. Very sharp out of the box. It would, shave hair and cut paper and do all those fun things, so no issues there. The blade was well centered right out of the box. That can sometimes be tough to show on camera, but no drag or anything like that. Lockup is solid, particularly up and down like that, no play at all. I can get just a little bit out of it side to side laterally, but that's really my fault because I like the blade to just fall shut that way. I probably err on the side of being a little bit looser at the pivot, but you can adjust that to tune it as you'd like. No issues or concerns for me from a function or durability standpoint. Things holding up great. I've been carrying it pretty much every day for the last few weeks. great size and weight. You really do forget it's there. I frequently carry it in the 5th pocket on my jeans, so that little pocket in the front right of your jeans clips securely there. My pockets tend to stay a little bit full, so I've appreciated being able to comfortably and securely carry a knife in that position. The only thing I don't love, as I mentioned earlier, is this coated steel. So if I sort of turn the blade in the light for you, you can see a little bit of discoloration and some light scratches up here. And I've not been hard on this thing. I've really only cut some boxes with it and maybe worked on a stick or two for some s'mores for the kids. It's just the nature of a coated blade. You know, you sort of show, you can see a little bit of wear there at the top. That's just what happens with coated blades. There are lots of guys that stay away from them for that reason. I'm a little bummed about it, but I like the look of the knife overall, and I'm glad I got it. But if you think that's going to drive you crazy, maybe look at the other Mini-Bugout now. Currently, they only have 2 configurations, the white and black, and then an orange handled version with a satin blade, and that blade is probably not going to show the discoloration and wear quite as badly. So that's that, but overall very happy with the knife. As I mentioned earlier, this was the Stormtrooper edition, so it was white and black. Dark green Rit dye solved that for me because that setup just wasn't for me. So you can search for the procedure on that, but to give you a quick rundown, rubber gloves, you got to keep the oil from your hands off the scales. I took the knife apart. That's a no-no from Benchmade's guarantee standpoint, but I wasn't too worried about it. I didn't like the idea of giving the whole thing a bath in dye, so I took the scales apart. You can search YouTube for that procedure as well. Pretty quick and easy. I'm not particularly mechanically inclined and didn't really have any issues. You got to keep track of some washers, but that's about it. I used Dawn dish soap and scrubbed everything down real well, and then gave the scales a quick bath in rubbing alcohol, and then boiled a bit of water. You know, I really only used enough water to sort of submerge the scale, so you know, a couple of cups, something like that. Got that boiling, added vinegar, maybe 1 part vinegar to 3 or 4 parts water, something like that, a little bit of salt, and maybe 1/4 to 1/3 of that bottle of dye, and then I just gave it a dunk. You know, I would let it sit for maybe 15 to 30 seconds at a time, and then just use some tongs. Whatever you use for this, make sure it's not going to break your heart if it ends up picking up dye, although I didn't have any issue there. And then I would just look at it about every 15 to 30 seconds to see if it was as dark as I liked. I'd say overall this one was in there for maybe 3 or 4 minutes to get that darkness. I like to call it more the Hulk now than a Stormtrooper, but it's holding up well. When you dye scales, you're only dyeing the surface. So if you get a deep gouge or scratch, you're going to see that underlying color, which in this case would be white. But for now, it's holding up great, and if that happens, I can just dye it again. It wasn't much of a procedure. So I am very excited about how that turned out. Again, really a fan of the Mini-Bugout overall. Maybe steer clear of the coated blade if a little discoloration is going to drive you crazy. Hopefully the review's been helpful for you. As I mentioned, Homegrown is going to focus on American-made outdoor gear. So lots of folks say they want to buy American made and say they'd spend a few more dollars to do it, but sometimes in the market it's hard to discern what truly is American made, and later we'll get into some more conversations about what exactly American made can mean. But anyhow, if the review was helpful for you, hit that like button, hit subscribe. Thanks a lot. We'll see you next time.